In this video, we're going to talk about scatterplot graphs. Scatterplot graphs show the relationship between two sets of data. So here's an example of a scatterplot graph. Now, before I talk about this, I do want to point out that this is very similar, almost exactly the same as a coordinate graph. So if you have plotted ordered pairs on a coordinate graph, you can figure out a scatterplot graph very easily. Now, as it turns out, in Texas, where I teach, we don't talk about scatterplots until much later in the year when we talk about coordinate graphs. But I do want to just throw it in now because I'm kind of in the graphy kind of mood. And so I do want to talk about the scatterplot graph. So we have the title, Study Time versus Grades on Professor Goosander's Potions Quiz. So we're going to compare these two sets of data, time spent studying and the grades that the students got, right? You can see over on the right-hand side, I have tossed in just 4 points for us to use. All right, I didn't include all the points. You can see there's a lot of little X's on here, which would represent, each one would represent a student. I've only included 4, okay? These are called ordered pairs. So again, if you have not reached coordinate graphs in class, then this might not make a whole lot of sense, but it will later. So along the x-axis, we have study time. And that seems to stretch from 0 minutes all the way to 70. Now notice my points over here on the side. I've highlighted those numbers in red. So the first number in my ordered pairs is going to represent study time. So I had at least one student study for 5 minutes, one student studied for 36 minutes, one studied for 57 minutes, and one studied for 70 minutes. And you can see, actually, looking at our little X's, we have a lot more. But let's just focus on these 4. We have the y-axis, which is grades, and that stretches from just above 30 all the way to 100. And you can see in my ordered pairs over on the right-hand side, we can see that at least one student made a 33, one made a 68, one made a 90, and one made a 100. So, right now, since at least in my class, we haven't talked about coordinate graphs, I just want to look at this scatter plot, not really focus on the x's, not really focus specifically on the numbers. That'll come later. Well, let's just talk about the pattern that we see. Because like any other graph, a scatter plot graph should give us information based on the pattern, on what we see. All right? So they seem to be in kind of a line. Right? It's a diagonal line, but it's a line. So what would the pattern be? Meaning, what could we say about the amount of time that people study on a quiz and the grade that they probably earned? Now, we could probably say, it makes sense, right? That if you only study for 5 minutes, you're not going to make a very good grade. You probably make a 33, at least in our example. But if you studied for 70 minutes for this quiz, you might pull out 100. Well, let me give you a little something extra here to think about this. What if we had a little dude, starts down here in the corner and starts walking up the line? How would you describe this pattern of dots now? I mean, that dude's got to walk from there up to the corner. Would you say that he's going uphill, downhill? Is it pretty flat? Are there bumps? Well, what would we say? Well, I would say that the line is definitely going up. It's increasing, meaning that the more time you spend studying, the better your grade will be, the higher your grade will be. That makes sense, right? So a scatter plot is going to give you that kind of information. So this is extremely important when you talk about coordinate graphs and when you talk about scatter plot graphs, is you have to go over along the x-axis and find that number first. And then you can go up and find the number along the y-axis. You have to walk over, then up. In my class, I always say you have to walk to the elevator before you can get into it and go up to another floor. So over, then up.